Good morning, New Hope. Pastor Christy here. I had talked a couple weeks ago about Jacob and about the maturity that he went through, that God really worked an amazing work in his life. I'm talking today about one of his sons, Joseph. Now, you would think Joseph, growing up in the home of a patriarch, would have had an ideal home life. It wasn't the case, though. When you really study Joseph's life, when you study the family that he grew up in, there was rivalry, there was jealousy. The family members, the dynamics, they didn't get along very well. And Joseph came at the tail end of that. He was precious Rachel, Jacob's favorite wife. He was the first son that she was able to have. And then you had Benjamin right afterwards. And Rachel dies when she is actually delivering Benjamin. So Joseph holds a very special place in his father Jacob's life. At that point in time, Jacob's name had been changed to Israel. But there's something really interesting that happens, this dynamic. The older brothers, part of this deceiving that Jacob had done all of his life, had trickled down into his older sons especially. You see them tricking their father. You see them being rabble-rousers, troublemakers in the town. And they're just not trustworthy. And Jacob knew it. And he didn't really trust them. And he had some good reason for it. We get this interesting situation with the coat. How does everyone always translate that? It's the coat of many colors. Yes, colors were an unusual thing to see, maybe. A carefully dyed, beautifully put together coat was an unusual thing to see a young man wear during that time. At that time, Joseph was probably around 17 years old. So a young man, but still in Jewish tradition considered a man. He is towards the end of all of his older 11 brothers. So they're older, they're married, they have older children. And it's interesting because that coat of many color can actually be translated another way. I was talking to my dad, and my dad had done some studying on this. He said that it could be translated as a coat with long sleeves. And I looked at him and said, why do the sleeves matter? And he told me to think about it. You see, he is a roofer. And he said, if I see someone walk onto a job site and they're wearing a light-colored shirt with long sleeves, what do I immediately assume? And I thought about it for a split second, and I said, well, they're probably a salesman or a foreman, or maybe even the boss of the company. And he said, you're exactly right. Because the people who are actually doing the manual labor, they wear, if not short sleeves, they wear things that are meant to work in. They can get dirty, they can get torn without a problem. So the significance of this coat that Joseph was given was actually that he was given a position of managerial responsibility over his brothers at 17. So his father gives him this special position, this special coat, and the coat represents this special love, this special trust that's been given to him. That's why his brothers look at the coat and turn green with jealousy and envy and completely despise him. It said they got to a point where they could not say a single good word about Joseph. Then again, we have a situation where the brothers have been sent to take care of their father's flock. And they go out into a town and they're moving around. And Jacob hasn't heard from them in a while, and he's getting worried about them. He's wondering what trouble they've gotten themselves into. So he sends Joseph to go and manage them, check on them, see if they need to do any damage control, basically. And that's when this whole scenario with him coming from a distance and they seeing his coat and seeing him happens. And they see him from a long distance away. They start talking about what they would like to do to him. And their words and their hatred over a long period of time give birth to horrible actions. They grab him, they throw him in an empty pit, and they plot to kill him. Well, then they decide, why should we just kill him? Why don't we humiliate him and completely take away, get some profit from him and take away his dreams of ever having a leadership position again. My whole point of talking about this is to talk about the fact that Joseph was really a young man. Think about it. He would have been in high school if he were living today at this time. He would have been someone in high school. Can you imagine someone who had been pretty entitled maybe his whole life? He was the favorite son. He was probably given better food than his brothers, because we know that he tests his brothers later to see if that will set them off. He is just given this special role. And yet, when he's put in this position of a slave, you don't see even a sniff of entitlement in him. Now, I don't know if that took a while to rub off of him, if God had to work that out of his life. But he went through some very unjust things. He was sold as a slave. He was accused of all kinds of things. But he doesn't live his life as a victim. He doesn't walk around with a chip on his shoulders and say, when is God going to rescue me? Why did God let this happen? I'm sure he asked that. But we see him as a young man that works diligently wherever he is placed. He has a good attitude as a slave in a foreign country. Do you think that that's something that you would see in yourself or in your children? I know it's convicting to me. I don't know that I could maintain that kind of a mature, respectful diligence towards God and respect towards people around me. I think I would be pretty tempted to just tell the world that they needed to go and find a hole to jump in. But he doesn't do that. He diligently continues his faith in God, and he keeps his morals. You know, Egypt took so much from him. They changed his name. They took away his freedom. He didn't have a chance to choose where he went anywhere. He even had to learn a new language. He was put into a position where he couldn't choose to marry or have children. And yet, the one thing they couldn't take from him was his faith and his dignity. And Potiphar's wife kind of attacked that later. But I would want to ask you, honestly, we live in a world where difficult things happen. There are people around us who make evil decisions. And a lot of times we blame God for it. Other people use their free will to encroach on us. And sometimes I think that we look the wrong way. We start having a bad attitude. We start blaming God. My question to you is, I know that there have been situations where people have sinned against you, because it happens to all of us. We live in a battle zone, a spiritual battle zone, and we have friendly fire sometimes and the fire from the enemy come against us. When that happens, do we blame God, or do we maintain an attitude and a posture of love towards him and belief and faith that he will take us through it? Joseph had a vision of leadership and a strong ambition to do his best for God. And he went through situations that should have stripped that away from him at such a tender young age, but he refused to let it happen. What are you going to decide you will do with your difficult circumstances?